Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Farm Bill Friday. My name is Rochelle Sparko, and I am the Policy Director at the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, and we will be talking about the 5 things that you need to know about the Farm Bill this week, as usual. First of all, before we get started, I want to thank Katie Wellborn, CFSA's South Carolina Policy Coordinator, for holding down Farm Bill Friday last week on Friday while I was away at a conference. Thanks, Katie, and great job. And thanks to everyone who watched her. All right, so what we are going to talk about this week on Farm Bill Friday. We're going to talk about an update on the Farm Bill's progress through Congress. So before I dig into the 5 specific things that you need to know, let me just remind you all that about 3 weeks ago, the Farm Bill was introduced and passed the House Agriculture Committee along a party line vote. And the next stop for the bill is the House floor, which brings us to the first thing that you need to know this week about the Farm Bill. So the first thing that you need to know this week is that the bill is headed to the House floor, but if and only if there are enough favorable votes. So what exactly does that mean, and why are they counting votes? They don't want to bring a bill to the House floor, and by they I mean the leadership in the House. They don't want to bring a bill to the House floor unless they know it's going to pass. It's pretty embarrassing if you bring your bill to the House floor and it gets voted down. So what they're doing right now is called whipping votes. So you may have heard of someone with the title of House Majority Whip. So that's what the whip is doing, and also the chair of the House Agriculture Committee is helping with that, Chairman Conaway. They're trying to figure out who's voting for the bill, who's on the fence, who's against the bill, and do they have enough votes to pass it. And so this is what is captivating the Farm Bill world right now, is what's going to happen, because it's not clear that they have enough votes. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that brings us to the second thing that you need to know about the Farm Bill this week, which is that it all depends on how Republicans are going to vote on this bill. Why does it depend on Republicans? It depends on Republicans because all of the Democrats have agreed as a caucus, as a group, that they're going to vote against the bill. That seems pretty clear, at least as of right now. And so the question is whether Chairman Conaway and the rest of House leadership can whip enough votes out of the Republican caucus to actually pass this thing on the floor. So they're looking for 215 Republican votes to pass the bill. And since there are more than 215 Republican members of the House, it seems like that maybe should be pretty simple, right? Turns out it is not. So moderate Republicans are concerned about the Farm Bill and are considering whether to vote for it or against it, in part because they need to go home and run for office. And some of these moderate Republicans are worried that the changes to some of the programs in the Farm Bill might not play very well with their voters, and if they vote for it, that they may end up losing their elections. And then on the other side, the sort of hard right side, where the Freedom Caucus folks are, those folks are also concerned about the Farm Bill, but for very different reasons. So let's talk a little bit about what are these sticking points, and I'm excited about this. Which brings us to the third thing that you need to know about the Farm Bill this week, which is that the sticking points are the SNAP program and commodity payments. So you're like, what? Fair enough. Don't worry. We have our Farm Bill title handout, which you may remember from previous versions of Farm Bill Friday. So the sticking points are up here, Title 1, Commodities, and right here, Title 4, Nutrition. So the nutrition title, Title 4, is where SNAP resides, and we'll talk a little bit about the commodity programs just a little bit, since those are the sticking points. Okay, so we know we're talking about Title 1 and we're talking about Title 4. And that's where all the consternation seems to be focused. So remembering with our title list that titles are issue areas, or kind of buckets, where programs and policies reside. We've got SNAP in that nutrition title as well as other nutrition programs, but SNAP has largely been the piece that's holding things up for folks. There's been a lot of really pretty good media coverage, I think, about what the changes to the SNAP program are, so I'm not going to really spend a lot of time there talking too deeply about what those changes are, but I will say that the Democrats are largely going to vote against this bill because of that Title IV nutrition program change. And so I think what they're concerned about is that the changes will reduce the number of people who are eligible for SNAP benefits, and in a pretty big way, and that is why they are, as a caucus, going to vote against the bill. I'm sure that they have other reasons as well, but that's really the big one. And moderate Republicans, as I said, are also somewhat concerned about these SNAP changes, and to the extent that moderate Republicans are going to vote against the bill, I think a lot of their reasoning will be in that Title IV bucket. So Republicans to the right are more concerned with two things. One of them is that the SNAP changes in the Title IV changes, that those changes are going to be, they will remove some people from the SNAP program, and there will be some cost savings there, which they're, I think, pleased by. I think there are two things happening with the folks in the Freedom Caucus and other people who are on the right but may not identify with the Freedom Caucus, that the program changes are not sweeping enough is one concern. And the larger concern with the SNAP changes is that instead of having the savings from reducing the number of people who receive SNAP revert back to the U.S. Treasury, the dollars that are saved are going to be plowed into a job training and education program that will be run at the state level. So all of that money gets taken away from poor, hungry people and plowed into government bureaucracy. And the Freedom Caucus folks and others on the right are not really excited about that. So that's kind of the SNAP and nutrition title sticking point. The other sticking point is that Title I commodity title. Oops, there you go. Let's take a look at it again one more time right there. Ooh, yep, there it is. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today because I don't think that has been getting almost any media coverage at all. And because it is an agricultural program, that's kind of the stuff that we care about here at the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. So I'm going to do my best to give you a very basic understanding about what's going on in the commodity title that's raising some ire. So let's start with, what's a commodity? Great question. Okay, so the commodity title offers farmers who grow largely storable products payments to control for the fluctuations of price that are caused either by supply side issues or demand side issues. So because I'm excited to use my title bucket and introduce you guys to the commodity title, here it is. It's back again. See, it's nice and big. The commodity title is, in fact, one of the biggest and most expensive titles outside of Title IV, the nutrition title, in the Farm Bill. So, what goes in our title bucket today? What kinds of things belong in there? I'm excited to bring you some things from my pantry. So, what are commodities? Commodities, like I said, are storable, dryable products, like dried soybeans, like lentils, like oats. Look, I've got organic seal cut oats. Yay. Our title bucket's getting so full with all of my food. And also rice goes in our title bucket. There are several other examples that I didn't have in my pantry, including sorghum, wheat, corn. Those are all commodity products. They can be stored and sold kind of at any time, right? They're not perishable the way that tomatoes are. Tomatoes, not a commodity product. Okay, so now that we know a little bit about what belongs in our title bucket, and we'll come back to our title bucket in just a second and put something very exciting inside of it. Basically, the commodity title was created in an effort, like I said, to control price in some way, either on the supply side or the demand side, in order to make sure that farms didn't fail. Because price fluctuations can happen pretty dramatically. If a farmer, basically your income can fluctuate wildly, and these programs are designed to try and control for that a little bit and make sure that farms stay in business. We want to keep prices at least relatively within bounds, right? So farmers can accurately kind of predict what they have to spend, what they can expect to have come in. And so this leads us to the fourth thing that you need to know about the Farm Bill, which is, and sorry for my late-breaking typo fix, the 2014 Farm Bill changed direct payments to commodity farmers into a program more like revenue protection. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what exactly I mean by that. So for a very long time, one of the ways in which we controlled price in this country for farmers of commodity products was that we would just pay them. Pay them money depending on what type of product they were growing, and to make sure that they had at least a certain expected amount of income every year, regardless of what happened with price fluctuations. In the 2014 Farm Bill, we no longer send direct payments to farmers. We don't just pay them for being a farmer of corn. The changes, I'm going to look at my paper here and make sure I get them right. So the changes in 2014's Farm Bill basically said there are limits to who can receive these payments. And there are limits on how much they can receive. And basically, we are going to restrict the amount of money that the United States is paying to commodity farmers. And we're going to try and build a safety net that seems a little bit more market responsive or places some responsibility on farmers. And so basically these the commodity title payments changed, right? So here we are in Title 1, and we're kind of thinking like, oh, we're gonna do a little bit more kind of with Title 11, and these commodity payments are gonna get tied sort of to crop insurance. So instead of giving money directly to farmers in this Title 1 commodities sort of up here, we're also gonna bolster our crop insurance program down here. And so instead of just making handouts, we're gonna say, farmers, you can buy subsidized crop insurance to control for some of the volatility in farming. And we're going to use the commodity title to do a little bit more control, but we're going to make it less expensive there. We're going to put some of the burden on you to buy crop insurance. So we're going to protect revenue now. We're not just going to hand out money based on nothing other than what you grow. So in the 2014 Farm Bill, right, we talked about there being certain qualifying restrictions in order to gain access to these Title I commodity payments. And so one of the things that the 2014 Farm Bill did was it said that farmers have to be, or the recipients of these benefits have to actually be actively engaged in farming. So you can't just kind of have your name on the farm and be working on Wall Street and collect your commodity payment. You've got to be involved in either the day-to-day farming of the farm, or you need to be involved in the management of the farm. The total amount of the benefit each year is capped. Right, so there's a certain amount of money that you can get from this commodity program, and even if your losses are higher than that, you just get that $125,000. That's large for most programs, the cap amount. And also, this one's important for what we're going to talk about later. Farms with over $900,000 in adjusted gross income for an individual farmer, or $1.8 million in adjusted gross income for a farming couple, are not eligible for payments at all. Once you reach that level of gross income, you are supposed to self-insure, basically. The taxpayers aren't going to give you money if you have millions of dollars in income, or over $1 million in income as a farm family. And the way that this happens, the way that this money actually gets conveyed to farms, is through two separate programs. One of them is called ARC, or Agricultural Risk Coverage. The other one is called PLC, or Price Loss Coverage. And I am going to not get you guys too deeply into the weeds here, but what I will tell you is that farmers have to opt into one or the other of those two programs, and that the way that they function is a little bit different. So ARC, the Agricultural Risk Coverage, basically tries to help farmers who think that the prices for the commodity that they're growing are very volatile. So they might be very high one year and they'll be very low in another year. And so then payment gets made only when the price of that product in a given year falls below some historic level that the government sets, right? So they've looked at the history of the average price of this product, and if it goes below that average, you can get a payout. Price loss coverage is different, and it functions well for farmers when prices are at a historic low. And so PLC is what a lot of farmers are looking to get into in the new Farm Bill, because commodity prices right now are historically very low. And what this does is it says that there's a payout to the farmer when the price is below a certain amount. So as opposed to a sort of historic average, there's just a set amount. And farmers will know that if the price falls below that they will get a payout. So the idea here is that it would all be less expensive for the taxpayer, because the government, that it would be used in conjunction, right? The price loss coverage and ARC would be used in conjunction with crop insurance, which the government also subsidizes, but the farmers are paying into it as well. So the question that we have now that we've gone sort of deeply into the weeds about commodity payments is, why does this create a sticking point for the Farm Bill? And that brings us to the fifth thing that we need to know about the Farm Bill this week. And that is that the House version of the Farm Bill right now eliminates or changes eliminates restrictions on who qualifies for revenue protection programs, right? So who gets these price loss coverage payouts, who gets these ARC payouts. And so that brings us to the last thing that I want to put into my awesome title bucket here, which has our oats and our lentils in it, and that is a cup of change. Money. Money goes into that bucket. All right, so these are our corporate welfare programs, essentially, designed to help keep farms in business. And the House bill, the House bill that is potentially headed to the floor in the next couple of weeks, changes the safety net that we've designed in the 2014 Farm Bill, and makes it into basically a giveaway to large-scale farms in a way that is very, very different than what the 2014 Farm Bill allowed for it. And places, in so doing, in handing taxpayer dollars over to these large-scale operations that used to be ineligible for PLC and ARC, it places family farms at a real disadvantage in smaller scale operations. So what exactly does the bill do? One thing that it does is that it will exempt farms that are structured as corporations from being subject to a single payment limit, right? So it sounds a little confusing or, convoluted. But remember, we said each farm is going to be eligible for a certain amount every year. And we said that for many programs, that amount is $125,000. And so what the bill does is it removes that single payment limit for a corporate farm and makes them eligible essentially for unlimited payments, basically overnight. About 10% of the commodity farms in the United States are structured in this way. So a lot of taxpayer dollars are potentially about to start flowing to corporate farms that would have been limited to that $125,000 payment limit in the past, currently. The other thing one of the other things that the Farm Bill, that the proposed Farm Bill does is it exempts a lot of different types of farms from that means testing provision. Remember, we talked about how an individual farmer, if he or she made over $900,000 in AGI, adjusted gross income, would not be eligible for a payout. And a farm couple that grossed over $1.8 million would not be eligible. So for different types of legal structures, including partnerships, joint ventures, LLCs, and S-corps, the Farm Bill eliminates that AGI, that means testing. And so farms across the country would be able to restructure themselves if they're not already one of those legal structures, make themselves into one of those structures to avoid the means testing and qualify for a payout from taxpayers, even if they are a pretty wealthy farm. I wish I made $900,000 a year. No, I don't. That sounds like it would be a lot of work. Anyway, so we've got folks who are large corporate farms. We've got folks who are structured in certain legal ways but are making a lot of money, being eligible for more money from the taxpayers' coffers. So for a lot of the Tea Party folks, the folks on the hard right, they do have some concerns, some pretty serious concerns about the amount of increased corporate welfare that is happening as a part of this Farm Bill. They find it problematic. So while SNAP and the Title IV programs are taking up a lot of the conversation in the media, it's a piece of the conversation. There's a lot that's happening in the Title I part of the Farm Bill as well. That is also raising red flags for the folks on the right and other people too. I'm concerned about that. So what does CFSA think? What do I think? Limiting commodity payments reduces the incentive for farms to consolidate. Right? If you can get unlimited handouts from the government in the event that you have a very large farm and prices fall below historic averages, there's no reason for you not to get bigger, to buy up your neighbor farm's land when he or she retires, or if he or she gets into some kind of financial trouble and needs to get out, buy up their farm, add another 100 acres, another 1,000 acres, another 10,000 acres to your operation. And I think that is problematic. I mean, we've seen that economies of scale when it comes to agriculture are not necessarily very good things for communities or for farms. By buying up smaller and mid-scale farms and consolidating them into large entities, we're seeing that it becomes harder for beginning farmers to get in. There's a lot of competition from wealthier farms to buy farmland. They're driving up the cost of farmland. It makes it hard for people to afford to get into farming. It means we're losing our mid-scale farms and our small farms. We see that even here in eastern North Carolina, that the number of acres in farmland isn't really going down, but the number of farms is. So we do know that consolidation is happening, even outside of sort of the Midwest, where large-scale commodity agriculture really owns the landscape. And we know that when we lose farmers, we see that vibrant rural communities kind of start to fold in on themselves. Having a lot of farms and a lot of farmers engaged in agriculture, doing different things, trying new things, hiring people in the community, having money to spend at downtown stores, all of that makes for vibrant communities. And as we see farm consolidation, we've been seeing sort of a downturn in rural economies and rural communities. And so we at CFSA think that there's a great deal of benefit in having small farms and mid-scale farms, to having lots of farmers trying lots of different things to figure out what are the best practices, how can I do this efficiently, how can I make a living doing this, and then sharing their ideas with each other, and farming gets better across the board. So we too have a problem with what's happening in Title I. And so I do hope that all of you will pay attention not only to the media coverage, the sort of large-scale coverage about the SNAP benefits or changes to SNAP benefits, but we'll also pay attention to how this farm bill is really changing the landscape in terms of corporate welfare for larger-scale farms, wealthier farms, and think about what that might mean for the kinds of farmers that CFSA supports, who are growing for local economies. So thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully we will have an update for you all next week that will have a little more information about how that vote whipping is going on the House side. And we're also keeping our eyes and ears open to hear what's going on the Senate side. We're expecting a bill any time now, but I think they're kind of waiting to see what happens on the House side, and they'll introduce their bill after the House floor vote if they're able to do a floor vote. And if they are not able to whip the votes and don't bring it to the floor, we expect the Senate will probably just step up and say, we're going first. So here's our bill, and we can move it to the floor. That process has been quite bipartisan, and so we expect a very, very different draft of the Farm Bill coming out of the Senate side, and I look forward to talking with you all about it at some point in the pretty near future. Thanks so much for joining us for Farm Bill Friday, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week.